Hello, viewers. This is Representative Carl Seidel and the People's View. Tonight, we have Senator Peter Bragdon from Milford, who is also the Senate President. And we're going to talk about some of the issues that come up in the Senate this time. So, Senator Bragdon, what do you think about the last year and your accomplishments?
Thank you for having me. I think we accomplished a lot last year. Most importantly, we accomplished what the people who elected us were promised that we would do. We tackled, first order of business, the state budget, which was looking to be at least $500 million to somewhere close to $1 billion in the red. Because really of overwhelming spending above means, optimistic and unrealistic revenue projections, and very bad financial practices over the prior 4 years. So when we came in, the first thing we said we were going to do was we're going to fix the budget problem, and we weren't going to raise taxes in order to do it. The House and the Senate working together put together a budget that did exactly that. It did require some painful and difficult decisions, but when people elect you, that's what they expect you to do, is make the difficult decisions. And if you look at the final budget that we passed, if you look back to the last budget put together by Republicans, which was put together in around 2004, 2005, and you adjusted that for inflation for each of the next 4 to 5 years, you end up with where we ended up with our budget. So it's not like we made a lot of cuts over what had been happening. What had been happening was the folks who were in charge in that intervening 4 years were just spending wildly and putting it on the credit card, basically. And so we had to come in and fix a lot of problems and put the ship's finances, the state's finances back on a solid footing. So,
and not use any of the gimmicks that were...
Right, no, gimmicks, no. We didn't borrow money, we didn't raise taxes, we didn't use rosy revenue estimates. And I think that what's telling is that the revenue estimates we used, we are on track for almost all the taxes. There's one with respect to hospitals that there's some disputes over that looks like it's going to be decided in the state's favors, in which case that money will be coming in on target as well. So I think our revenue numbers, and this again was the House and the Senate working together, our revenue numbers were realistic and so far 6 months into a 2-year budget accurate.
Looks
so
good.
That was the first thing, that the most major accomplishment. Second to that, but not too far behind it, the state's pension system was grossly underfunded. I would say it was somewhere in the mid 60% range in terms of its funding levels. And to put it simply, the system would have gone belly up had we not made the changes we had to make. And again, it was difficult decisions. It affected many people, public employees of the state, both school, town, state employees. But we had to explain to them, and I went to numerous meetings in my district, explaining to them that, look, if we don't fix this, it won't be there for you when you retire. So again, difficult decisions had to be made, but we made those decisions, and we kept our word. When we elected, we said that's what we're going to do. We also said we're going to focus on the economy and the jobs, and we looked for ways to help out small businesses in New Hampshire. Our goal is to have businesses be able to succeed in New Hampshire, because when businesses succeed, they grow, and when they grow, they hire people. When we came in, when the election was held back in November 2010, there were somewhere in the neighborhood of 40,000 people in New Hampshire out of work. That has dropped down now. It's in the low 30s, and we see the gradual improvement in the state's economy. Part of that, I'm sure, is because we took a proactive approach to business. Of our 24 senators, 12 of them are freshmen. 8 of them never had served in the legislature before, including the 2 lovely senators from Nashua, Senator Lambert and Senator Luther. And all 8 of the brand new ones had business experience. They knew what it was like to balance a budget. They knew what it was like to make hard decisions.
Definitely.
And they know what it's like to make efficient use of their time. And so we tried to be very efficient in what we did, but do the right things to help businesses in the state. So I think we were able to accomplish all of those things, which are exactly what we promised people that we were going to do.
I think that we're attracting new companies up here.
Absolutely.
I like the one that's coming up from Massachusetts and seems to think that they'll have 500 new jobs.
Yep, it's it's small companies and big companies that we need to be attracting to New Hampshire and just giving them an environment where they can succeed.
I think that's we're doing it. We're still continuing to do that this year. What do you think it 2012 will do for you?
Yep, I think it's the same priorities. I think we still need to keep an eye on the state budget, make sure the revenues are coming in okay, make sure the spending's going according to plan. And then also keep an eye on the economy and the business environment. Some of the things we'll be doing in this second year are not quite as sexy as some of the topics in the first year, but rewriting the corporate tax laws, the corporate laws in the state, the LLC laws. So when the small person wants to go start their own small business, they don't need to go hire a lawyer and accountant to set it all up. The LLCs in New Hampshire should be simpler to set up. So a person, and I knew this when I started my business, I had a small software business that I started. It was just me and hiring people and getting some computers and stuff, and I'd much rather spend that money on the equipment I need for my business than paying lawyers and accountants to help start the business. So again, if we make it easier for people to start businesses, those businesses can grow, they can hire people.
And one of the areas, too, is the rules and regulations that we're looking into.
Rules and regulations are very difficult and sometimes contradictory or sometimes duplicative. Certainly some regulations are necessary, but when you have so many regulations that you actually impede companies from growing, you really need to take a look at what are we trying to solve. And one example we had was the ski areas up north. When they would withdraw water for their snowmaking from the rivers, our Department of Environmental Services required them to keep track of how much water they took out of the river. There may be a public purpose for that because you want to make sure there's water left in the river for other people, but they would take the water out of the river and put it into holding ponds, and then at night they would take it out of the holding ponds and spray it on the slopes. Well, the department required them not only to meter it and have all this expensive equipment when they took it out of the rivers, but then when they took it out of the holding ponds, they had to have this same duplicate metering system in the same forms and send it down to Concord, which I'm sure ended up in a closet somewhere. So the ski areas just asked us to take out that second step. We already have covered the public interest by saying, okay, what's happening to the river? It doesn't really matter what's happening to the holding pond because the only reason it's there is to hold the water to be sprayed. So it's little things like that that add up to make it difficult to do business in New Hampshire sometimes.
It's a wonder they didn't ask for how much water melted. The melted snow.
If they could find a way to measure it, they might have done that too. So.
Well, I know there are some silly rules and regulations. I'm having a hearing on a subcommittee on the rules and regulations. And you know that there are several different definitions of an independent contractor that the state's working under?
Yes, the independent contractor issue has been around for a long time too, and it's a difficult issue. A lot of it's driven by tax things, and obviously when your focus is on taxing people, then you tend to make things more complicated than they need to be.
That's true, but I can't imagine an operation of the government has different definitions for different agencies.
Yep. It is very strange.
But anyway, so you're going to be looking at a lot of the same things that you've already been looking at, but more in detail, more oriented to making this a better place to live in, to have the funding. And where do you see the problems, though? Or do you have a particular issue that you see is going to be controversial?
Well, certainly on the Senate side, anything involving the budget is still controversial. I know there are a number of issues that the House is currently dealing with that some would deem controversial, and we know at some point in the Senate we'll probably get those bills as well, and so we'll deal with those. Certainly an issue that's always controversial, no matter what you do, is every 10 years new districts have to be drawn for both the House and the Senate, and that's a very it's a political process. It's usually a partisan process. One side likes it, the other side doesn't like it. That's typically how it works, and so those will be difficult discussions that will go on, and there'll be a lot of fighting. And if the past holds true, the plans end up in court with somebody arguing at least that they're not constitutional. And so it's a process we go through every 10 years. And when I was in the House briefly 10 years ago, I was on the Election Law Committee, and we dealt with redistricting then. So I got to see it 10 years ago, kind of from a distance. This time it's a little more up close.
Had a few problems then too.
Yes, that particular one did pass the House and Senate. The Governor Shaheen vetoed it. The House and Senate were not able to override those vetoes, so there was no plan at all. And then it went to the court, and the court says, well, if you don't put one together, we're going to draw one. And the legislature couldn't get one together, and so the court decided they're going to draw their own plan. And I really don't think that's an exercise they enjoy doing, and I don't think it's something they look forward to doing again. So.
And I don't think people enjoyed the result.
That could be as well.
Well, let's hope that this one, we're going through the House has approved their plan. Now we'll see how that goes through the system.
Yep, and the Senate committee approved the plan yesterday, and so that'll be on the floor of the Senate next week. I don't think you guys are meeting next week, so you've passed yours, we've passed ours, so when we meet again, we'll be dealing with each other's redistricting plans.
Good. Well, some of the other things that we passed are the constitutional amendment proposal, and I know that I think the Senate is agreeing in general about it, but the wording has to be played with.
I assume you're talking about education funding?
Yes.
Yes. Yep, I think the House and the Senate and even the governor have proposed different constitutional amendments for education funding. I think we all agree that we need to have one, and the matter is to get the wording, and really it has to be presented to the voters. So the trick is to get something that 66% of the voters will approve, and that really needs to have then agreement amongst Republicans and Democrats and the governor to be able to get that high threshold. And so we continue to work to try and find some agreement and some combination of words that collects enough votes from various coalitions to get through.
And doesn't confuse the people once it gets out
That's true, because if you have something very confusing on the ballot, people will be tempted to vote no. So when in doubt, vote no is what is not a bad mantra.
That's right. And we also have the one on the income tax.
Yes, you folks just passed, I assume it was this week, the one requiring, actually you passed one last year that requires a 3/5 majority to increase any tax or fee. We held on to that one. We'll be dealing with that in a week or two. And this other one's coming over. We might deal with them together. That requires, that basically says no income tax, direct or indirect. And so we haven't discussed that at all in the Senate. We knew it was coming over and figured we'll see what it looks like when it comes over. There was some debate about what words were being used. So we'll take a look at it when it comes over. We'll have our debates as well and see if the wording is agreeable to us. If not, we'll suggest some changes and we go through the process that we go through.
That's going to be the main thing, is to get it so that all the sides can accept it.
Yes, yep. And there's a number of issues there that's even some would argue that it's good to have that as an issue on people's minds when they go to vote every 2 years, because in New Hampshire that's certainly a big issue. If a candidate runs saying they want an income tax, they tend not to do so well. Some have argued if you put that language in the Constitution, it's no longer an issue on Election Day, and so
I've heard that.
yeah, so there'll be some interesting debates in the Senate, I'm sure, about what the best approach is for that.
What do you think about this? We've seen a number of proposals for different constitutional amendments. I won't get into all of them, but the number of them is something that I worry about.
I don't know how many you folks have had. You've only sent us 3, which is a manageable number. I'm not sure. I guess, we sent you one on I think a line item veto that I think you guys toasted. So yeah, we only had 2 or 3.
Yeah.
You only sent us 2 or 3, but I know there were a lot more that never made it on our doorstep.
Well, they're still going to be discussed coming up with modifications. There's a lot of work that's been done.
I'm sure the House will do a splendid job working on these.
But is it your opinion that maybe 2 or 3 should be the limit?
Well, I think if you, my initial thought was if you have 10 amendments on the ballot, then people might be not focused on the most important one. Although we did do a little study looking back in history, and there were some years where there were 6 or 7 on the ballot, and even the 6th and the 7th one did better than the 1st and the 2nd one. So really? it doesn't seem to be the case that if there's a whole bunch, people aren't focused on the most important one.
Still depends on the issue then.
Yeah, I think it depends on the issue and what the voters are thinking at the time.
Because I know that's been a discussion on our side that we can't have too many of them.
That's my, my initial assumption was that. I think I still believe that, but the data at least shows that there are times when, if there's a lot, people seem to be.
And if the issues are important enough.
Right, and if they're in, voters maybe were in a generous mood that year, and that was following a constitutional convention as well, and so it might be different if it's proposed by the legislature. So.
We had a lot of new people this year on the House side, and you had too, but I was wondering if they're as anxious to get their ideas in on some kind of legislation on your side.
I think so. I think especially in the second year, and I know one of your guests later on will be Senator Lambert, and he can comment on this. But I think when you're, if I remember my first year, both as a House member and as a senator, just kind of laid low and watched what was happening. But then as people get to know you and you get to know people, they start coming to you with their ideas for what they'd like for legislation, and you start putting stuff in. And so I suspect after the first year, people kind of want to get a little more involved.
Yeah. Well, is there, you talked a little bit about redistricting. You had no problems with that, but do you think that there'll be any problems with the governor on how he...
I don't know what the governor's going to do with those. I guess it depends on what they look like. I mean, certainly we think our Senate plan is wonderful, and he should fully endorse it. I don't know that that will happen. I'm sure the House thinks their plan is wonderful and wants the governor to fully endorse it as well. So, something tells me he's going to take a careful look at both of them and decide. Typically it's slightly controversial, and like I said, they usually end up in court no matter what. So I suspect they'll all end up across the river from the State House up at the courts.
We have a few minutes left, and I'd like to just cover a couple new things that I haven't covered there before. There's an issue with the Superior Court in being in Nashua and moving it to Manchester and keeping it completely up in Manchester. Now, I guess it doesn't make too much difference for people in Milford, but we think that the two largest cities should each have a Superior Court. What is your opinion on that?
I haven't looked at it too much. I do know it came up last year, and I felt that an issue that big and that important, it kind of came up at the last minute.
Right.
I think, they had just finished the reconstruction or renovation of the Manchester one, and I guess they're going to be moving a whole bunch of stuff around and creating the circuit court. So they were moving a whole bunch of stuff around, and someone thought, and I get from a logistical perspective, it probably makes sense if you're going to be moving stuff around, do it all at once, and said, hey, let's do this too. But I think cooler heads prevailed, and they realized that that was a lot of change to propose with not a lot of process and input and transparency. And so that's one thing we certainly try for in the Senate at least, and I'm sure in the House as well, is respect the process and don't spring big surprises on people at the last minute. So I think the court people realized that was an issue. So I know they proposed it again. I assume it's a bill in the House. I don't recall seeing it in the Senate. So we'll take a look at it when it comes over again, assuming it comes over, depending on what the wording of it is.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of guessing on what it was saying and what it was going to cost, what it was going to save.
Yes.
And originally, the numbers that tossed around is over $1 million we're going to save by reorganizing. Then it came out, no, it's not going to be that. It's only going to be a couple $100,000.
So it keeps going down.
And then it was, well, it's only going to be about less than $100,000 for the first 2 years, and then it's going to be more. Now, this is probably going to be the main point of contention. Are you really going to save anything? Because it is going to cost people here to go up there. And both courthouses have enough room, so it's not a question of squeezing space out. But there is a question from our side in Nashua that we need to have it here because of the ability for our law enforcement people, the lawyers, and even the parking up there in Manchester isn't the best. But we're going to have I listened to the Chief Justice give a talk to the county commissioners, more on the TV for the communication with the prisoners. But they talked about the move being an efficiency move for their operation. I've asked her to come on, and she will be on in a future meeting.
Oh, good, good.
So we'll be able to get.
I think it's important to get that information out there.
It is.
We need to make these decisions based on facts, and if you don't have and again, that's the whole reason for taking your time to get the facts. So when you vote on it, up or down, yes or no, you at least know what you're voting on.
That's right, and what the result's going to be. And I appreciate what they're doing, because I think what they're doing in reorganizing the court should make it more efficient.
It should. I would agree.
Yeah. Okay, and one other thing I think I had was the private prisons. The state's looking into private prisons. How does the Senate feel about that?
Well, the Senate, I believe it was a Senate bill that at least asked them to do that, which I believe was then incorporated into the budget. I think it's something we have to look at. We have to look at everything the state does and say, okay, is this the best way to do it? There are some that argue that a private prison can house our prisoners for less. I think if you look at the details, you may find comparing apples to oranges. So Vermont does it for much less than we do, but they are only sending out their mid-level security prisoners to an off-site facility in Kentucky, I think. But we still have to have the infrastructure for maximum security. So there's a lot of fixed costs. So unless you pack up everything and send it to another state, in which case you have difficulties with court access and everything else, you need to be sure you're comparing apples to apples. So I'm open to the idea, but it's really going to be a matter of, okay, does an apples-to-apples comparison save us money or does it not? I can tell you that the facility that we're using in Concord, over 100 years old, and the Goffstown facility for women, both need to be replaced somehow, and that's a given. So now it's a matter of how do we do that. I think proposals are due this month on various options from private companies, so I think it's our responsibility to look at them and, again, have the facts and vote yes or no on an informed basis and make the decision.
My understanding is there's about 3 companies that are bidding.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. There are 2 real large companies in the country, and then I did meet with a third one that I hadn't heard of before. So I'm going to say there's at least 3 that will be making proposals.
That's what I've been reading in the Manchester paper.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And there's a question, though, where to place it. Always not in my backyard, obviously.
Ward 3, I think. Ward 3 would be the place. Senator Lambert's in the audience.
No, I don't think so.
Specifically in Senator Lambert's.
And they're going to put a bridge across the river through his territory.
He's not coming back. We'll put it right there.
Well, no, there is some land, too, in Goffstown, next to the county facility.
Yes, the county facility has land there. So,
and I don't know if that is an option or not. Whether
I think it's responsible to look at all the options and whatever is the most efficient way to get the job done too. I mean, you can be a cheapskate, and I can be a cheapskate, but if you're going to be a cheapskate, make sure you get the job done too.
Well, and you want to do it to make it less intrusive to the people around it. And I think there's a lot of open land there that would do that.
That would do that.
And they do have to do something with the women's prison that's there.
I agree.
And their contract right now with the county is going to be up in June.
Okay.
So they have to, they're going to have to extend it a little bit because they can't just do it overnight. Right. It'd be a couple of years before the facility would be ready. But that might be an option, too, to be considered.
Yep, I think we should look at all the options.
Yeah. Well, we're running into the end of the half hour, and I was just wondering if there's anything else you'd like to bring up from your side.
I'll just mention it's been a pleasure working with Senator Lambert and Senator Luther representing the Nashua area, they've been great additions to the team.
They have been. We appreciate their help in the Nashua area. The Nashua Republican Club is the sponsor of this show, and we do have the ability to answer questions from our audience if they write into our website at NashuaGOP.org.
Very good.
So if some of our people have questions,
forward me any questions you get.
We'll do.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Nice
Great to be here.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
But we have a wonderful guest, Representative Kevin Avard from Ward 1 in Nashua. Kevin, welcome aboard.
Thank you, Carl.
I'd like to find out a little bit more about you.
Wonderful.
Whatever made you decide to run for representative now that, and then tell us how you're enjoying your first year up there.
Well, originally I decided to run. I just think everybody was getting sick of what was happening in Washington and the whole Obamacare, and I think the frustration on many levels with the big boys up there in the feds, and some of the local things that were starting to trouble me as well. So I kind of got on the bandwagon. I just said, listen, I can't take it anymore. I want to at least be part of maybe the solution. I'm not a professional politician, but I'm a small business owner, and I just wanted to get my voice out there.
Was it an experience running for office?
Yeah, it was. So, you get to meet different people, meet different politicians. I really didn't have a huge campaign. My funds were very limited at that time. But like I said, I just wanted to get involved, and we actually had a very close race. I won by 10 votes. So your votes do count, and I want to thank all those people out there that voted.
You want to tell the people to come out again?
Yes, I do. Absolutely.
We had some close races, but we did a wonderful job here in Nashua.
Yeah. There was another state rep, Sanborn, or what's her first name?
Over in Ward 3?
In another part of the state there. She had...
Carlson, was it Sue Carlson?
I'm not sure. It was a close race, but she's now doing a great job. But it was Lori Sanborn. I'm sorry.
Sanborn.
That's a different part of the state.
Yeah, that's the place.
But she, again, there was another close race. She wanted to get involved, and now she's heading up the business coalition.
That's right.
And doing a great job.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Small owner too.
Right. Small. I guess they own the
draft.
The draft
town,
up north.
Yeah, up in Concord.
Yeah.
And her husband's a senator.
Yeah.
So how about that for the marriage.
At least they got something to talk about. Hopefully they are on the same page. That's a good thing.
Well, having a tavern to commiserate some of the problems up there is probably good too. I know they've hosted a couple of the business meetings up there because I'm on that committee also. But it is very interesting. So tell us about your committee and everything.
Well, I'm on a new committee, and it's a committee that hasn't existed for over 100 years. And Speaker O'Brien really had the foresight, I think, to put this up, this new committee. It's called Redress of Grievances. I'm on a pension reform as well and another one, but my main committee is Redress of Grievances. And the theory behind that is it is the legislature's responsibility to hear the concerns of the people. And in years past, what had happened is somebody would have a problem. They would bring it to the legislature, and it would be read as a form of document, and then it would be filed.
No action.
No action. And how can 400 people basically sit there in session? And just looking at the logistics of it, how can they just say, "Oh, okay, let's look at it and deal with it now"? It's just not possible. So, just like another committee, we have a bipartisan committee, and we can listen to everything from marriage problems or mortgage problems,
family court
problems. And the confusing thing that people have is they think, well, I don't have to listen to the judge. I'm going to go to the redress of grievance.
No.
It's not how it works. Basically, what we're finding is that somehow legislation or the courts have abused the citizens. And so when a person goes to court and they find that the judge didn't want to listen to their evidence, well, what do you have? Do you spend all your earnings on a lawyer to come up with the same results or hope that you get a good result? Or do you get a court-appointed lawyer who basically represents the court, but they're going to help you through the process? And what we're finding, whether it's in mediation, whether it's with guardian ad litems, whether the judge might have done something unethical, this allows the people to come out and say, listen, I need to be heard on this. And it's amazing how the word's getting out. We had a bipartisan talk just the other day with the governor. He invited a number of us state reps on both sides.
For the breakfast?
No, everybody keeps talking about the breakfast. I wish I was invited to that. I feel like I got missed.
He does that with some of the new reps. In 2009, I was talking with him myself.
Right.
But I thought that's the social to get you into the, get you warmed up.
Right. Well, this is the next session later, and all we have was cookies and coffee. So it was later in the day.
Okay.
And we're just sitting across from each other, and we're talking about issues. And the Republicans talking with the Democrats and vice versa. And one of the Democrats was saying something to the effect that, I'm so discouraged. It's so polarizing up there. And every time I hear redress of grievances, I just close my arms and I just let it go over my head. And that was all I needed. I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
And, and the governor, I was a little nervous at first because here I'm in front of the governor. I said, I beg your pardon. You understand that this is a golden opportunity for us to represent the people.
And it's specifically in the Constitution of the state.
Exactly. Well, it is, too.
Yeah.
We are, the legislature are supposed to be the inquisitors of the federal government. Not the federal government, of the state government agencies.
That's right.
And that's our job. And I was just baffled because, here they hail themselves as the people's representatives. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Here's an opportunity that we can work together as a bipartisan group and help the people out. And I just think it just boggled my mind because another state rep said, on the other side, said something to the effect, listen, we have 800 bills up there. And you new guys are coming in and you're offering all these bills. My head's spinning. Don't you understand there's consequences to these bills? And I just sitting back, and that was my segue.
Yeah.
Yes, there are representatives, and thank you for bringing that question up.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to bring up the issue that's been happening year after year in session, but for some reason it gets knocked down. But this is the second part of the Constitution, Article 73A.
Yeah.
It was adopted in 1978 to our Constitution. It's an amendment to the Constitution. And it basically gave the courts license to make law. So the Supreme Court Justice would be the head of all the courts, which is fine, I can understand that. And they will have rulemaking ability. But there's a little clause at the end of that amendment, which there's all kinds of controversy, conspiracies. I'm not into that. But the last part of it said, and such rules will have the full force and effect of law. So when a person comes into court and they have 5 affidavits, and they say, Your Honor, here's the evidence, and here are the witnesses to go with this evidence. And Your Honor, I can, I'm on oath.
Yes.
And Your Honor says, you know what? In the interest of time, we're not going to look at that. We're going to listen to what the guardian ad litem says. And that information, even if it's in a sealed envelope, will take care of the situation. And you have no recourse. And that all is given to the courts because of this one amendment.
Praise, yeah.
And it goes under Rule 1.2, which says waiver of rules. And I was talking to a couple of the big boys up at the Capitol the other day. I'm just one of the little guys. And they're all sitting down, they're talking. And I said, what about 73A? And they're all familiar with it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it'll never pass. Well, maybe it'll pass the House, but it won't pass the Senate. And I said, well, what's the difference this year? Why will it pass the House this year? And, well, because there's a lot of issues.
Yeah.
But I think it'll specifically pass the House if we get the word out, and because there is a redress of grievance. And those unintended consequences that are a result of past legislation, we can sit back now and look at the handiwork of the previous legislatures. And I can only say it's a real honor to be able to sit there and listen to an old lady and say, listen, I just got a piece of, in an accent to boot.
Yeah.
And she's a widow. I got this letter the other day. I was going to throw it out, but it looked like junk mail. I decided to open it up. And sure enough, it was a mortgage company. And the mortgage company took over and bought her mortgage. And the mortgage company says, well, we're going to change your rate because of the insurance. You're going to have to buy the insurance from us. And we're going to have to refinance. And so she did everything they told her to do. It ended up in the courts. They didn't reply to the courts. The courts sided with her, but then the judge recused herself. And then I went to another judge, and the judge decided, I'm not going to listen to the evidence. So they foreclosed on her house. Here's an old lady. She's a widow. And the courts can't help her. She has no money. What do? You come to the Capitol. And so that's just one instance. Now, I know you've been part of this program in the past.
Well, I don't know if they told you the history of this. We tried to do that in the 2009 session. And the former speaker wouldn't even allow us to form a committee. So all we had was a caucus of this, and all we could do was listen to it. Now, we were able to generate, we heard so many things on this one marital master in the south, or rather the northeast part of the state. And I don't know, I think 90% of the complaints we got tied in with him somehow. So we tried to impeach him, but you can't impeach a person at that level. He wasn't quite a judge,
right.
So you had to find some other way of handling it. So that we got crucified in the whatever bill we had, because we also had something where we were going to do against one of the judges, and none of that got through because it was blocked because we were in the minority.
Right.
It wouldn't even really, there was no real discussion on the floor. But it got enough people interested in it because there are some real grievances there that tearjerkers, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
People who have lost their house, people who haven't seen their children in 3 years.
Yeah, I'm working on one with that right now.
And people who know that their children are being taken care of by their ex, and they're always at the doctor. Why, was that because of poor parenting or what? I know it's really. I'm glad you guys got a full committee meeting. You got the process, and then you're going to be able to do something. But there are a lot of people out there, and it expanded beyond just the family court to other things too. I mean, I think you heard one about a dentist who wasn't doing his job too, something like that, or at least I still get some of the mail from your committee.
I know. I just got, you handed something to me the other day on that. I think it's a tragedy that the former speaker didn't allow this to happen, because what it tells me is there is a different view. I'm not here to blow smoke for Speaker O'Brien. I think he has done a really good thing. He's allowed the people to be heard, and I wish Congress would do something just like that. I wish there were something.
That would be good, wouldn't it?
It'd be great. You know, the Congress should be the people's voice. And if I could just get on that bandwagon for a second, I'm really offended by the president going around Congress.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I'm not hearing in the main media is, even though Congress has a really bad reputation, people have to remember they are our voice. Just like we as legislators are the voice in New Hampshire. You got a problem, call your legislator. And when you go around Congress, criticize them all you want, because there's definitely room for that, and I'm sure there's room for us. But don't go around them. They're our voice. Don't sell them down the road, because once they're gone down the road, once you sold them out, who's gonna be your voice?
Not the media nowadays.
Definitely, no.
You would think that the media would pick up on something of that. I mean, that would attract a lot of viewers.
Right.
And really, to get to our show, that's kind of why we're doing it.
Right.
I mean, we're sponsored by the Nashua Republican City Committee because we like to get our perspective out. It's just not being picked up by the newspapers.
Right.
They demonize us, and as you're talking about O'Brien, they call him all sorts of names. And I've worked with the man for 4 years now, and I think he has his heart and soul into this job. He really, goes out and does a lot of work getting things organized to listen to the people.
Right.
I mean, he was the one that made this committee.
Exactly. And every time I've gone to his office, all this bullying stuff, I'm sorry, but I don't know what's going on. I'm a very opinionated person. I can be, but I don't see any of that going on.
Yeah.
You have to have some type of order, and without it, this legislature is like herding. I've heard it too many times. It's like herding a bunch of cats.
Oh yeah.
You have to, in order to get something done, you have to, get people in line to some degree. But I caucus with some of the libertarians, and of course with the HRA, and
the HRA is the House Republican Alliance. People that know that.
Yeah, the HRA, and they lean more conservative.
Right.
And there's disagreement within those branches. I mean, and sometimes they oppose each other, and so there's room for disagreement, and civil disagreement, and some of the chatter that we have amongst ourselves. I mean, we debate these things just like the Federalist Papers. I really would love the public to see what's going on behind doors, because you have some really good people in there.
Oh yeah. Dedicated
to the Constitution. And I would love to see us move back to a more of a republic instead of this democracy where,
Well, I think one of the things we have to get out is information like this. People don't know what's happening up there. It's not that it's behind closed doors, but most of the meetings are open.
Right.
The only things that are closed are caucuses, when we don't want somebody else to know what the tactics are that we might be using.
Right.
But it's open, and people come out with their ideas of opposition, and I've heard that for 4 years. I've been, oh, this is the 4th year that I've been up there. We have, as you say, we debate these things. We have people that, and we don't have, complete unanimity when we have votes, but we do try to gather most of us together, because together we can get something done. We can accomplish some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, another thing I wanted to tell our audience is that as part of the Nashua Republican City Committee, we have meetings every second Thursday, and we want them to come down, listen to our speakers. The next meeting is February 9th, 7 p.m. at the Crown Plaza, and we're going to have Kevin Smith, who's going to be running for governor.
Right.
And we're going to have him talk about it, and we have questions and answers. So people are welcome. They don't have to be registered Republicans to come down to our open meetings like that.
Right.
And we have a website, NashuaGOP.org. You can see all the different things we have, the events, things that connections to other websites, the Libertarians. There's 4 or 5 organizations that we have connections with their websites, so you can see, what the different types of opinions are going on.
I love the fact that people really, once they get to know us, I really believe that the Republican Party is extremely diverse.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't get enough press on that.
Yeah.
And the amount of debate that goes on, it's, this whole idea of mind-numbed robots is such a fallacy. If you sit in some of the caucuses, these people read the Constitution. They read this legislation. There's 800 or more bills.
Yeah.
And they chew it up. I wish I were that smart. I can't go over 800 of these bills. I'm in the right committee.
But you get a lot of paperwork, I know. A lot of things.
We do, and a lot of times we're chasing a rabbit, it seems. You have to narrow the scope to, okay, let's find a remedy. Let's find out what we can do. And the redress of grievance is really the People's Committee. It's one that reaches all the committees. It's one that we can see everything what the legislator's doing. And I can't praise enough Speaker O'Brien for getting that on the ground, and I hope it continues with the next session.
Do you have a website or an email that people might want to ask you some questions on grievance committee?
Absolutely. Because of the overwhelming flood that goes to the legislator, I don't ever go to that anymore. I just can't. There's so much junk mail. There's so much barrage.
There isn't.
I get flooded with stuff that is just so, I don't have the time to go through that. But this is a local station. So those on the local area, just write to Kevin VRD 2010 at gmail.com.
Okay.
And that'll get right to me. That gets right to my phone. I'll look at it, and I can go to it that way. That's really getting to me.
Yeah, you're right. We do get an awful lot of emails. I must get over 100 a day.
I have a small business, and I'm trying to survive that, on top of everything else.
How do you do it with your time at the Concord and a business to run?
I'm not. It really is a sacrifice, and I really love it. We get enough to pay the bills, and
what is the business that you're in?
It's a carpet cleaning business.
Okay.
It's that carpet cleaning business, that guy who drives crazy around town with that big white van and the aardvark on it. That's me.
Aardvark, huh?
Aardvark, yeah. I steam clean, and I clean tile, and I clean
really?
Just general cleaning. Been doing it for about 24 years now, and it's paid the bills.
Yeah.
I'm a singer-songwriter too, so I do that on the side.
Well, you have some of your music on this show.
Yes, absolutely. We put it out there, at least they're not turning it off because
that's something else.
Yeah.
Well, what do you do in your spare time?
Well, I have a TV show called Gate City Chronicle.
Oh.
Yeah, it's on Channel 96 here local. And one thing about that TV show that I really enjoy doing, and I really like it because it allows local businesses to come on and talk about their business. It doesn't cost anything, and we get to know the people in our community. I've interviewed authors. I've interviewed dance studios, Bikram yoga, just the small businesses that you know what? It's nice to get a plug once in a while, and it's a shot in the arm. They can come on the show, talk about their business, and then we'll send them a hyperlink so that they can put it on their website and they can tell their friends about it. And the point is, this is their show.
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk to your neighbors, and guess what? It's free. You know, and I really, that's you know, if I can do anything for the community, that's a really nice asset. I wish I had this 24 years ago.
It's something that what the internet does for everybody.
Right.
I mean, that's really becoming a business-oriented area. You really do a lot. And if anybody wants to have questions, and either contact you or contact the nationalgop.org website, where our contacts are on that. And they can send us emails where they want some questions or some guests. We have a number of different guests that we're going to be having, prominent people in the government up there for the next few weeks. And then we're going to introduce all our representatives here in Nashua so that you get to know your representatives a little bit better.
They're a really good bunch of people.
Yeah, really doing a lot up there.
Yeah, they really are. And the more I'm there, the more I respect them. I respect their commitment, their honesty, and their diversity, their dedication. They really care about the state. They really care about the freedom and the quality of life, you know. Well,
that's what really pleasantly amazed me, that we got so many good ones, you know. Well, we have 22 now of the reps in Nashua, and I think, well, 17, I think it is, are new, haven't run before. And you're all active. I mean, we have people on Ways and Means, Finance, Pete Silva, who's deputy leader, and I have a vice chair of Public Works, and we handle the bonding and everything, the capital funding. So there are a number of people that are very active, and Dee Hogan's the vice chair in family law.
Yeah, we're actually hoping that she can come on some of the grievances as well.
Yeah,
because of her experience with family laws. And
she sat in last 2 years ago.
Yeah,
she was very interested in that.
Yeah, she would be a great asset to that. I think that dispelled the old. It used to be in my mind years ago that people would go to the House and it was like a country club, Republicans. You know, it's just a social thing. Just get on this committee or that committee. You won't have to work so much. It's not like that anymore. No. These people are very dedicated, and they're very willing to hear you. I sit in front of Don LeBrun.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love the guy.
Yeah.
He's very honest, and you know. The paper had a picture of me turning back after a roll call.
Oh yeah.
And I'm going behind me to ask Don LeBrun for some sage advice, you know. And he doesn't hold any words.
No.
He's, you know, and then he'll say to me, Kevin, what do you think about this? And then Bill's right next to him, Bill Ohm.
Yeah.
And they'll reach up and they'll say, now, did you read this last part of the line? And I'll look and I'll say, I didn't see that. And so we kind of spar, and we do talk with each other, and you know, they're a little bit older than me, and I definitely respect their opinion. But you know, it's nice once in a while when they ask mine. You know. Well,
it's interesting you brought those two up because they're on my softball team.
Oh, is that right?
The over 60 crowd. We have a softball team, and John Sobrowski and I were elected in 2008, and we were playing, and we got into politics, and all of a sudden we had 6 more people that were interested in running. And so we have a miniature softball team up there now.
Nice.
That politicians who were interested in what was happening and seeing they were not satisfied with what was being done, and they wanted to get something done. And I think you're right. We all have people who are very interested in working.
Right. Yeah, and getting stuff done, getting stuff passed, making sure that the government doesn't infringe on the growth of the state. People have to realize that if the government gets too heavy, if it gets too lopsided, then the taxpayers are here just to serve the government instead of the other way around.
That's right.
And we have to keep them in check, and we're the way to do that.
Yeah, well, I think there's a whole bunch of things that are happening up there, and we'll be talking about them in future shows. Things that we're trying to make this state more receptive to new business and to have businesses grow. So we want to get rid of some of the regulations and things that just slow down progress.
We had a guest on my show on Gate City Chronicle, an H&R Block gentleman, and you know, we were just talking about some of the regulations, and we are one of the most over-regulated states, even more than California, and I find that rather incredible. But one of the ways to allow businesses to come into our state is to deregulate to a degree where we're not hurting the citizenry.
Right.
We're
not
just
taking care of safety or anything.
just
like
cutting
that.
the red tape
Yeah.
so that it doesn't make it impossible for a business to come in. And instead of raising taxes, eventually grandma's not going to be able to pay those taxes. She's going to have a hard enough time paying for the oil, if so, God permit that oil to come in from Canada. But still, she's having a hard time paying for that. And of course, the food prices. We don't need to raise her taxes as well. If we bring in industry in a responsible way, they'll take that burden away from, well, they'll ease that burden for the local
right.
taxpayers.
Oh, yeah.
And it really is that simple. We don't need to raise the level of income.
We don't raise, well, we'll raise the income, but we won't raise the rate because we'll have a broader base.
Correct.
And that's what we're looking for.
Right.
Well, you know, Kevin, this has been very good talking to you, but we're starting to run out of time.
Oh, wow, that was quick. Wow.
So nice having you here.
Well, thank you
Good
for
luck
having
on everything you're doing up there. I think you know, we'll have you back later in the year, and you can talk about all our accomplishments.
Let's hope we have some more good ones.
Okay.
Great. Carl,
Thank
I
you
really
very
appreciate
much.
it.
Thank
All
you.
right.